And we had talked about, I had shown all of the different universities that were using the cell lines and the embryonic cells from these hydra creatures, this model organism, to create what they literally called soft-bodied nano robots. So, I mean, this technology is real. And we had gone on to talk about that that's what parasites have always been. We just haven't understood. We're just now getting to that technological level to understand why there are things in nature that are not natural, that don't have life of their own, but have to have a host to parasite off of something that is alive, a living organism. So that being said, I want to show this clip from Rob Skiba, where years and years and years ago at the Prophecy Club, he had given that presentation about the hive mind and how these parasites can take control of your brain, and that this mark of the beast technology was going to be introduced through this virus and these vaccine injections well ahead of his time. And sadly, as I talked about in this video, Rob Skiba was martyred. He went home to be with the Lord. So he made it. Congratulations, Rob. Thank you for leaving us your body of work. And here's a tribute to you. We are going to play right now what you said that has come to pass and borne witness to the Holy Spirit, that you were indeed hearing from the Holy Spirit. And thank you for issuing the warning. And congratulations on your graduation. We'll carry the torch from here.
I'm going to show you in that regard.
Ants are a part of the most disciplined, dedicated social system on Earth. Until, that is, they become slaves to behavior-controlling parasites. Suddenly, these rogue ants no longer serve the colony. They're taking their orders from the parasite. Okay, let's back up. Now, how did this happen? It all begins when the ants in any town, USA, consume the slime of a passing snail. They divide it up and take it back to the colony. This is a blunder of epic proportions. Turns out, the slime is loaded with eggs of a body snatcher called the liver fluke, a type of flatworm. The liver fluke burrows into a part of the ant's brain, and for unknown reasons, it's almost like the fluke enslaves the ants and orders them to carry it to their next hosts. Any grazing mammal host with a nice warm liver will do, but in this case, a cow appears. The liver fluke worms can switch the ant's behavior on and off, causing the infected ants to place themselves in easy-to-eat positions at dusk when mammals are feeding. No cows in sight, ants act normal. Cows appear, ants are in essence ordered to take their positions in purple flowers and latch on. The cows ingest the vegetation, the ants, and the fluke larvae inside the ants all in one bite. Once inside the cow, the worms burrow out of the stomach and into the liver, where they develop into adults and dine on liver tissue. They lay eggs that are excreted from the liver into the bile duct and then defecated by the cows. They don't kill the cows, but the cows become weak and emaciated, devastating herds. And all because of parasitic mind control.
Did you catch that? This microscopic parasite controls the brain of an ant that normally gets around doing its thing just fine, but as soon as a mammal walks by, they all run up to get eaten because that parasite wants to get into the liver of a mammal. All right, and there's a much longer version of this video that I have that shows similar things happen to humans. You ever wonder why you crave sugar at night? Like before you go to bed, you want that snack? Because that's when parasites eat. That's controlling you. When you're sitting there and it's like 9, 10 o'clock in your night and you say, man, I need a cookie. You get up and you go eat some junk food. You are being mind controlled by a parasite. All right, that's why. You start taking things like Pararid, there's various natural resources you can take to get rid of them. All of a sudden you stop craving it at night because you lose them. It's amazing. Parasitic mind control. Now keep that in mind when we start transitioning into the mark of the beast talk. Okay? Revelation 13:16. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand. I think I put that there twice, didn't I? Here is, just make sure you got that. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. And we covered that at some length in the previous sessions with regard to Nimrod and all of the various ways he's known by 666. Revelation 9:5. And to them it was given that they should not kill them, but that they should be tormented 5 months, and their torment was as the torment of a scorpion when he striketh a man. And in those days men shall seek death, and death shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them. Everybody talks about buying and selling. The mark of the beast, you're not going to be able to buy and sell. Well, that's true, but what about this part, where people are begging for death, but death flees from them? They have essentially purchased a counterfeit immortality apart from Christ. That is why they are cast alive into the lake of fire. They have genetically modified themselves such that they are no longer redeemable after that, and the only solution is to take them alive and put them in the lake of fire. Okay, everybody talks about the buying and selling, but they're missing a big part of the component right here. Revelation 19:20. And the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet that wrought miracles before him, that which with which he had deceived them that had received the mark of the beast, and them that worshipped his image. Those both were cast alive into the lake burning with brimstone. Now, back in the 90s, 80s, whatnot, and barcodes, everybody was on the barcode kick. I was too, preaching, that's the mark of the beast, the barcode! Because you got the two long skinny lines there is the 6 in the barcode. And you notice on the barcode it has two long skinny lines on both ends and one set in the middle. So everybody's like, see, 666 with an identifier in the middle, it's the mark of the beast, the barcode! Right? Then later everybody started talking in the more recent times about the microchip. Now everybody thinks it's the microchip. Well, it may be a combination of all of those things, but I really think it's in here. And it's in the syringe. I think we're dealing with something that has to do at the genetic level with DNA. And my personal opinion is, how do we, what purchased our salvation? The blood of Yeshua. Doesn't it make sense that the counterfeit of that would be perhaps the blood of the Antichrist? If we have our salvation through the blood of Jesus Christ, it makes sense that he's going to offer a counterfeit with his blood. Right? Now, if my theory is true concerning Nimrod, he's a 5,000-year-old dead guy that's resurrected. He's Frankenstein. Taking some of his blood and putting it in you, not a good idea. How could that happen? Well, Dr. Thomas Horn and others speculate on this, how something like this might happen with regard to a pandemic. Again, in true Hegelian style, Hegelian dialectic is where you cause a problem which causes a reaction that you just so happen to have the solution for, already ready to go, right? So, okay, just imagine this. Whoever they are, they're responsible for everything, right? Release a really bad flu pandemic of some sort. Well, imagine this. If you don't get the shot that they've got all ready to go for you, no shot or cure means, well, you don't have a job. Somebody mentioned last night their job requires them to take the flu shot. And if they don't get the flu shot, they lose their job. So we're already seeing kind of a microcosm of that happening right now, a test. Got to take the shot. You can't be a teacher in school, or you can't work at CVS or whatever. You got to take the shot. So they're already making it mandatory for some people. So we've got a little miniature test going on with that. If you don't take it, there's no cure, no job. You end up being quarantined. Oh, you don't want to take the shot? You don't want to take what really I believe is going to be the mark of the beast? Well, fine. You're going to have to be quarantined. Bring you over here. Well, that means you're not going to have any money, which means you won't be able to buy or sell. That seems to be a good explanation to me to explain why they can't buy or sell, but also explain why they beg for death, but death flees from them. Because they can't die, right? So that's if you don't take the shot, you end up with no job, quarantine, no flu, or no food, no buying or selling. But if you do take the shot, well, you have some interesting side effects. It's like those commercials, where you always see the drug that they're offering. The side effects may include drowsiness, blah, 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 Take the shot. Side effects may include counterfeit immortality, not redeemable, and cast alive into the lake of fire. Ask your doctor if it's right for you.
So that was back in 2013. I'd say he was pretty much right on the money, wouldn't you? And maybe that clip will help restore somebody's faith in prophecy. I know a lot of the dead churches teach now that the gifts of the Holy Spirit don't exist and God doesn't speak to his people. The prophecy is, just what's written in the Bible is the only prophecy. Humans don't receive prophetic words from God anymore, and there are no prophetic teachings. So hopefully, some of these clips that I show will restore people's faith in God. It's not a story about somebody who used to be alive. He is alive and he still talks to us. And we've been warning and warning and warning, but there have been hundreds of doctors who have come out, and many of them were martyred for coming out and telling the truth and warning people about big pharma and about all of this research that's been going on. So we also thank you, Lord, for them, for every servant that you have sent to teach us and to help us. Okay, so along the lines of what Rob was saying about these parasites being a mechanism of mind control, that's interesting on so many levels, not just what we've already covered in previous videos, but you notice that in the presentation that he showed, how they talked about it crossing, species lines. So if you follow this line of thought, it dispels all of these mysteries and impossibilities that they've been telling us, like the impossibility that there would be shedding. Well, no, not in the conventional sense. And by the conventional sense, I mean their lies, that they have lied to us about this thing they are calling viruses at all, germ theory at all. It's not a coincidence that this graphic they show us all the time that they're telling us is a virus just happens to look exactly like what we call programmable matter. These spheres with the sensors all around them controlled by AI and electromagnetism, and also just happens to look exactly like the things that we have seen under the microscope in these, what they're telling us are vaccines in those vials. So I'm sure it's just another big coincidence that these graphics they always show us with these spheres with the sensors all around them. And we'll talk more about this toward the end of the video when we get to black goo and super soldiers and different things. But yeah, I'm sure it's just another coincidence, right? That the graphic they always show us of a virus looks exactly like programmable matter. But clearly there is transmission, and we know that parasites can be transmitted to people, even through breathing, like pinworms in a family or whatever. But it also explains that this thing, this COVID-19, this thing they've been calling COVID-19, why it would be so frequently reported crossing all these species lines. Here we have deer testing positive for COVID right here across the Mississippi at the St. Louis Zoo. The tigers there tested positive for COVID-19, and people's cats, people's dogs, all of these things reportedly testing positive for COVID, which everybody says it's evidence that, of course, the PCR tests are garbage and they were just part of the PSYOP, the psychological operation, to roll this thing out. We know that. But I'm asking you to look at this in another context, because there are several prophecies, dreams, and visions that people have had about weird things that when they flip the switch on this zombie apocalypse thing, the ones who do successfully receive the transplant into their brains, that that people were having to shoot their dogs, they were having to shoot their animals. Now, whether that's because it's in vaccine vials like the rabies that is now mandatory as well, at least it is in our state. If you have a dog, it's mandatory that they have to be injected. So whether it's something like that, or whether this really is crossing species barriers, viruses don't just transmit lions, tigers, deer, your dogs, your cats, humans. It's like the multi-purpose COVID-19 all of a sudden. But when you look at this under another paradigm, both we've said that what they've been calling a virus are these molecular nanomachines that are designed to carry CRISPR-Cas9 fragments of DNA to be inserted into us. But at the same time, there are what they're calling these soft-bodied robots that are genetically engineered from this tissue of things like the Hydra, these stem cells, and they reproduce in a different way and they infect in a different way. So the same people, same technology, but different types of nanobots, different types of delivery mechanisms, molecular nanomachines, all of it. Some are aerosolized, some are parasites, some are, so you see with Rob's presentation how it does cross from an ant. An ant can test positive for the parasite, and the cow can test positive for the parasite. So, there are other ways of transmission. Now, just to be clear, I'm not saying that the only thing that is going on is this synthetic biology, these soft-bodied, self-replicating synthetic biology that spreads through your nervous system and literally takes over your body. But make no mistake, these psychopaths have weaponized all of these nanotechnologies like this. We've all seen the DoD presentation where they propose using a virus to genetically augment the entire civilization and to turn off certain genes that make people perceive God, or that they have found in their brain scans are portions of the brain that light up during religious thought or religious activity. So it's essentially a chemical lobotomy, a nano particle, viral genetic augmentation that creates a chemical lobotomy. That's what they're saying they want to do. It's MK Ultra at the high tech level.
What you see here is by spreading this virus, we're going to eliminate individuals from donning on a bomb vest and going into a market and blowing up the market.
So our hypothesis is that these are fanatical people, that they have overexpression of the VMAT2 gene, and that by vaccinating them against this, we'll eliminate this behavior. The virus would immunize against this VMAT2 gene, and that would have the effect that you see here, which is it's essentially to turn a fanatic into a normal person. And we think that will have major effects in the Middle East.
How would you suggest that this is going to be dispersed? Aerosol?
Well, so the present plan and the tests that we've done so far have used respiratory viruses such as flu or rhinoviruses, and we believe that that's a satisfactory way to get the exposure of the largest part of the population. Most of us, of course, have been exposed to both of those viruses, and we're quite confident that this will be a very successful approach.
This is fascinating. What's the name of this proposal?
Yeah, so the name of this project is FunVax, which is the vaccine for religious fundamentalism.
So even though that was a presentation from 2005 and the sneaky bastards were trying to get the Department of Defense to weaponize this against religious extremists in the war on terror, right? Against, oh, those people over there in that country, they're terrorists because of their religious beliefs. So it's okay to genetically augment them. But now we know that all of this has been developed. Our own government says we are the terrorists, their own citizens. We're the domestic terrorists. According to them, we're the ones that they are targeting. We're targeted by our own government.
Don't dare call them protesters. They were a riotous mob, insurrectionists, domestic terrorists.
Domestic terrorists.
So yes, there's no doubt that they're still using these other nano delivery systems that they call viruses to augment our DNA. And we've all seen, or most of us have seen, like this 1995 speech about them using these liquid crystals to take over people's brains and create these zombie-like humans that can be controlled by frequencies. We've talked a lot about that in the past with the crystals that were found in, not just in the vials of these present COVID injections, but also in the bloodstreams. So please go back and, watch those if you're not aware that this has been verified now. And for those of us who have watched that 1995 speech and other speeches that are in a foreign language, and you wonder, is that is it true? It absolutely is. You can see right here, this is Rockefeller University. We'll talk more about this in a minute, but just to verify what these people are actually saying is actual science. This is 2017, so it's old news as well. But yeah, so they're talking about, with new technology, scientists are able to exert wireless control over brain cells of mice with just the push of a button. So this whole idea of remote controlling humans, animals, like we talked about in the Epstein video and the ECOG research that he was funding at Harvard and in China and all of this stuff with his quote unquote philanthropy organizations, just like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, these front organizations where they just funnel money into this research all over the world. This has been going on a long time. There really is, they've achieved it. They achieved it a long, long time ago. And if it's in the mainstream news, they achieved it at least 30 years before you're going to see an article right here straight on rockefeller.edu. And like we mentioned earlier, these eugenicist families go way back. So you have Rockefellers before Rockefeller University and Bill Gates's dad. These family lines, these people who are in this eugenics agenda, their family lines go way back. Like I said, this world empire, like the book of Daniel describes, Mystery Babylon, this world empire goes way, way back. But the families that we are seeing in what I'm calling this most recent 100-year war, the world wars, it's easily traceable, whether it's Bill Gates's family or the Rockefellers. This eugenics program is absolutely real, and it's always these same players. In our generation, these are who the players are. And then we also know about what Julian Assange called evil dust, which is this smart dust that is sprayed over us in chemtrails. And here on my Twitter account, I posted a video of it on January 22nd of this NSA seminar at West Point. So I think this was back in 2017. So that, this is old technology. We're not on the cutting edge of anything. They're way further along than this. But he openly discusses aerosol nanobots and weaponized nanoneural biohacking technology that already exists. He's teaching a modern warfare class to West Point, the NSA is. So you can go over on my Twitter and see this video, or I'll try to remember to put the link below. I'm not going to put a ton more clips in here because you can't really choose. You need to really watch the whole hour on a lot of these things. So I'll put maybe a minute or two, and then I'll put the links below, or you can go over to my Twitter account and find it around January 22nd. In this clip, he is giving the presentation, Your Brain is the Battlefield of the 21st Century. And he is explaining to the officers that not only are there military enemies who have all of these technologies, but you as a member of our military may be subject to genetic augmentation. Super soldier program. It's gone mainstream. It's not Max Spears and, these people in the Project Camelot talking about it anymore. This is the NSA telling the West Point officers that, yes, there may be a time that you will be augmented because the military decides that this is what we need to do. And isn't that weird that right now the United States was like one of the very first countries that made these COVID gene therapy injections mandatory for our military? So listen to this.
And this is the idea of neuroenablement. Neuroenablement. You will hear this referred to in a variety of different ways. Performance optimization, enhancement, enablement, maximization. These terms mean something. A number of years ago, our group was tasked with the Air Force to develop a lexicon, a nomenclature that would be able to define these in more precise ways. And I'll not bore you with that now. But the idea of enablement gives forth, I think, a particular meaning that's relevant. You're enabling individuals to do some aspects of a performance of a task that is germane and justified to their operational mission, and that is in fact done with regard to protection of their charges. So in other words, we're saying, we're going to make you good to go, and we've decided that this is good. The reason this can become problematic, of course, is that what definition of good are we using? What we define, whoever the proverbial we may be, to be good, might be quite different than what they, whoever the proverbial they is. And as a consequence, we have to keep a much broader window of opportunity and possibility open to be aware for the potential benefits, burdens, and risks that this type of engagement may pose. What types of things can we do to make our people better, if you will? Well, certainly we can use a variety of advanced psychopharmacologics and neuropharmacologics, in other words, drugs. And I refer you to a wonderful book written by a colleague of mine, Professor Jonathan Moreno, called Mind Wars. First edition came out in 2006, second edition came out in 2012. And Professor Moreno does a very good job in defining and explaining the history and historicity of the way the brain and cognitive sciences had been used in national security, intelligence, and defense operations, both by the United States and more globally. And what we see is that this is certainly not a new event. We can look back into antiquity and see that there have been attempts to try to maximize the performance, capability, sustainability, and protection of those individuals who are operational warfighters, literally from ancient Roman Greece all the way to the 20th and now 21st century. It's the tools and techniques based upon the understanding and depth that we have that increases the granularity and specificity of effect and increases sophistication and gravitas of outcome. The more we know about the brain, the more we can develop ever more selective agents to affect the structures and functions of the brain in cognition, emotion, and actions, and the more we can do so in a way that's more like sharpshooting rather than buckshotting. But irrespectively, drugs can be somewhat dirty. What I mean by that is they can have a host of adverse effects, some of them side effects, some of them direct effects. And very often what we'll find is that unless we're able to deliver the drugs directly to a particular site in the brain or elsewhere in the nervous system, they can have heterogeneity of effects throughout the body. And that can lead us to some undesirable outcomes. But we don't need to be limited to drugs. No. We can also use a variety of computational brain-machine interfaces that are both closed and open loop. And these include things like transcranial magnetic and electrical stimulation, stimulating the vagus nerve transdermally, or if you wanted to get somewhat more invasive but certainly more specific, brain-machine interfaces by virtue of deep brain and superficial brain implants. And I shall tell you that one of the leading projects in developing state-of-the-art brain implants is a DARPA-funded project aimed at the medical side for the treatment of neurological and neuropsychiatric spectrum disorders. And this program is called SubNets, Systems-Based Neurotechnologies for Emerging Therapies. But what you also need to appreciate is that DARPA program, like any program that is oriented towards engaging brain function to then alter those functions in certain ways, directional ways, can be harnessed for what's called dual use. Medical purposes that are then depurposed to medicine and used for other agenda, inclusive of warfighter enablement and enhancement. Furthermore, we understand that there are a number of nations outside the United States, some of whom are allied, others that are at least competitive, if not combative, that are engaged in these types of programs looking at the capability for transcranial and deep intracranial modulation of brain function to improve the functional performance of military and intelligence operators across a range of viable missional tasks. We are not alone in these pursuits.
Now, it's also interesting that this was a West Point presentation, because if you go back to what he's talking about here in the beginning, before you get down into all the neural augmentation and all of this new nanotechnology and stuff, he talks about psychopharmaceuticals. And we've talked about the beta tests leading up to where we are now when the CIA released the LSD, and many of those operatives, almost all of these people came from West Point. You know, they all have these backstories that, oh no, they were just too cool and rebellious, so after their first year or two, they dropped out of West Point and this sort of thing. But no, they were all recruited as influencers, like we have Instagram influencers now and everything. So yeah, these were all West Point guys. Check their histories. They all went, the musicians of the era, you guys know it, in the Laurel Canyon episode of the Age of Deceit, I talked about all that. Several of the big musicians from the acid rock, they were all West Point candidates who just mysteriously dropped out and were catapulted into mega fame as influencers during the LSD beta tests. Again, if you just happen to stumble upon this video studying the COVID vials and the injections and all of this is your first introduction to the awakening, then if you go to my website and go down, I don't know, let me see, it's about midway here, right here, this Age of Deceit series and the Hive Mind, the second part of it. If you go to there, it's the end of this second one, the Hive Mind one. where we talk about Laurel Canyon and the acid rock and how all of these mega rock stars that came out of Tavistock and out of Laurel Canyon, they were all plants. They were all created influencers by the CIA. And then if you go all the way down to the very bottom, this next level bunch of information, these top two videos, the artificial dimensions, machine elves and ghosts, this one with the Rubik's Cube, and then this Black Goo, Morgellons, Black Eyed Kids, Hive Mind video here. Those are probably the best two videos that go into a tremendous amount of detail about these CIA, LSD, DMT, all of these psychopharmaceutical beta tests and who all of the players were, like traces, where they were recruited from, who their contacts were, where the labs were, in what country that were providing them with these chemicals and all of that sort of thing. And it has all of the Timothy Leary stuff. And then this one has several, I think both of them actually have trip reports of people who have taken these chemicals and, you know, what they actually experienced and that type of thing. So if you are new to this information and you're just joining the mass awakening because of the worldwide lockdowns and this COVID thing, you might want to go back and see how we got here and start up here with these psychopharmaceuticals. And it'll help you understand that this, as much as it sounds like science fiction, this is absolutely true. And this is not an organic movement. This is a new world order government that we are at the very, very end game of this. But right here on the screen, this is just one of the slides he used in the presentation. And he goes, like, we're talking about all the way from the soft level to the hard level. You know, they start with the psychological operations and the social engineering and economic leverage, where they cut us off from being able to go to a job, no jab. They demonetize our accounts. They try to, destroy us economically. Then all of the psychological operations, then the chemicals that we've talked about in the other videos, then biological warfare with microbes and toxins. And that's exactly what we're talking about. And then neurotechnologies, hybrid cyborg systems, biological drones. I mean, it's right here on the screen. So this isn't a secret. It's a secret right in front of our eyes that they are using these neurotechnologies, and they have hybrid cyborg systems to create biological drones going years and years and years back. Okay, so I said all of that to say that I'm not saying that this parasite thing, these soft-bodied hybrid, genetic hybrid organisms are the only thing they're using. But right now, I just want to talk about this one topic real quick and link some more things together, put a few puzzle pieces together around this type of technology. This particular technology, we've been told are just parasites, is extremely interesting over the long term, from ancient times to seemingly unrelated stuff that, really obscure stuff like Donald Marshall's claims of this vril parasite that is inserted into the brains of people through the eye, and they become mind controlled. And again, the parasites that he talks about, one of the weird things he said was that people who got vrilled then became very sexually perverse. They all became bisexual instantly once the parasite entered their brain, which, like I mentioned before, we've heard that story from people that were just talking natural medicine, that don't talk anything about what we're talking about here. Weird anomalies, like when they did the parasite cleanse and they passed a tapeworm, they were formerly homosexual and lost all homosexual desire. They were completely changed. So it was as if those desires, those behaviors were linked to a parasite. And that's what Donald Marshall reports from these cloning labs and these vril reptilian creatures that put a parasite in the brains of world leaders. And like Rob Skibo was talking about how these parasites can transmit through insects into mammals, they have this life cycle that the ancients viewed basically as reincarnation. These parasites that were reduced to nothing, something so small, taking over control of everything. So like Rob Skiba was talking about, the parasite, the eggs being in the horse manure, and then they can be transferred through the bodily secretions of snails into insects like ants. And then by mind controlling the ants, they get themselves into the cows, and then they spread themselves through the cow manure. And if you go back to ancient times, you'll see that like these dung beetles and certain genres of these dung beetles, like scarabs, were worshipped as that these were the demons. These were the reincarnation of their fallen angels. That's what they literally said. So, talking about these parasitic infections that Donald Marshall talked about, and you can go all the way back to the pharaohs of ancient Egypt, and they worshipped these scarabs and these dung beetles. Of course, the mainstream re-education camps all through our public school, our public education, they have taught us that this is all mythology. And in fact, they've taught us that the pagan gods aren't the fallen angels, because they want us to think that all of these religions contradict one another, when in fact, all of the findings of archaeology and all of the pagan gods completely confirm the truth of the Holy Bible. The Bible says that these fallen angels came down, they ruled over mankind. It gives the genealogies of the enslaving the human race. It's all there, and that's exactly what we see in the archaeological record. So when I say fallen angels, I'm talking about the pagan gods. And you read their own manuscripts in their words, and that's what they say, right? They worshipped these insects, saying that they carried the consciousness of their pagan gods. And they've just dumbed us down to the point that we accept it when they say, oh, that's just all mythology. And they completely suppress all of the high technology, because they are indeed, like 1,000 years, they're a breakaway civilization. They have continued on with all of the knowledge in the mystery schools, and they have dumbed us down in the re-education camps. And even though we can see it, the archaeological record and the seven wonders of the world and everything with our own eyes, they're like, oh no, that's not evidence. That's a mystery. Just believe us. It was all mythology. And as the famous quote of Arthur C. Clarke says, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. We're like, yeah, that's magic. That's unbelievable, right? That's mythology. And like we saw in the opening ceremony of Switzerland's Gotthard Tunnel, they also had, along with all of the satanic imagery of the Baphomet and everything, they also had these scarab, branch of the dung beetles. So I think undoubtedly, as far out there as Donald Marshall's story sounds, I think that there is definitely something to this parasitic transmission. This would also dispel so many of the mysteries and completely explain all of these anomalies we've seen. Like this recent Fox News story, records reveal Chinese government performed anal swab COVID-19 tests on U.S. diplomatic officials. Anal swabs? I mean, I know it makes a good joke. I get it. I've heard all the jokes. It's really funny, but it really doesn't make much sense as far as a flu test. I mean, seriously? But it makes perfect sense as a parasite test, because you always test for parasites with a stool sample. Just like Rob was showing the clip about the eggs being passed through the cow manure and blah, blah, blah. It also makes perfect sense why all of these tyrannical governments have banned ivermectin. It's US to ban ivermectin. Australian regulators ban ivermectin. And you got the FBI is going to work with the USPS to seize ivermectin out of the mail. I mean, it's like these people are rabid about it. They're just crazy about it. Well, this is why. Talk about a way to foil a plan. They tell us that it's a flu. So, hey, ivermectin is not effective on flu. It's not effective on flu, but it's highly effective on COVID-19. So COVID-19 is not a flu. It's a parasite. And they don't want us getting our hands on any anti-parasitic drugs like this. They don't want to stop it, like the Tuskegee syphilis experiments. They want this to colonize us and continue to spread uninterrupted. And once you start going down this rabbit hole, I mean, this opens up a whole new can of worms, no pun intended. Yeah, their meme about horse dewormer kind of falls flat once you know the truth. But if you go over to my go over to my website, and on the sidebar, there's that list of all those different links. You click on the suppressed cancer cures, and it'll open up this page. Are you wondering why God has not answered the prayers of so many, quote, terminal cancer and HIV patients? He has. And so I talk about some of these treatments and give a rundown. But this one, the medical mafia, and mysterious deaths of all these doctors that I did. It starts out with the Joe Tippins protocol, which is fenbendazole. It's a dog dewormer, and it cured his cancer. And it was discovered by an employee, a clinical researcher at Merck Pharmaceutical. So they have known for a long time. So again, going back to the Henrietta Lacks immortal cell line and the experiments they're doing, creating these genetically engineered organisms, parasitic organisms, and cancer. They said that was cancer. Those cells were cancer. And we see cancer now rampant in the people being injected with the COVID vaccine. But also, like I mentioned in the last video about medical malpractice being, one of the top causes of death, that the other top two causes are cancer and heart disease. And I believe, if the truth be told, both of those are also included in the medical malpractice cause for death. Just like we see on the VAERS reporting system now, we have the heart disease and the fast-growing cancer reports among all of these neurological problems. But talking about those top two causes of death, yes, this is an obvious side effect of these injections. The myocarditis, the injury to the heart. But let's take a look at this video with this graphene oxide on the myocyte cells of the heart and see how frequencies hitting these graphene oxide particles, it changes the heart rate. They are remote controlled heart cells, just like we showed from the Rockefeller.edu website back in 2017, that they had remote control brain cells in the mice. Well, they've also done it on the heart cells. Okay, so what you'll be looking at and looking for here, you can see the places that are lit up. Those will be where the graphene oxide nanoparticles have attached to the myocytes of the heart tissue. And they are lit up because they are hit with a frequency. You'll see when I start the tape, they don't initially start lit up. And this will be a heart that is beating regularly at a steady rhythm. And then the instant the frequency hits, you'll see the graphene lights up and it changes the heart rate. It starts beating really fast. Hey, I'm sorry, you guys, about the barking dogs in the background. There's nothing I can do about it. I've got to get this work done. And I bought a new big guard dog a few months ago, and he's still getting to know the dog that I already have. So they're not fighting, they're just playing, you know how dogs do, but they're pretty loud. I closed the door upstairs, but you can still hear them. They got a big bark. So I'm very sorry about that. I'm not a professional with some studio or anything. I'm just doing the best I can. Please forgive the background noise. Okay, so here's what it looks like normally, a normal heart rate. Okay, so here's the normal heart rate. Hits it and see how it speeds up. Don't. And it goes back to normal. Play it one more time. See, it's just a normal heartbeat. Frequency hits it, the graphene lights up, and it starts beating really fast. So I'm not even saying that every single person that we've seen, like on the sports teams or whatever, that falls over has been hit by a frequency and is a targeted individual. It's hard to say because with the advent of the iPhone, and we've just seen such an increase in these sort of ailments with all the Wi-Fi around us and everything. I know that Parable of the Vineyard channel, he was talking about how he used to play those iPhone games and he would lay back in bed and he would have his iPhone on his chest, and he started having heart arrhythmias from just resting his iPhone on his chest. This was years ago, before the rollout of these most recent injections. So, and I know I had heart arrhythmia, and so many people I know, they started doing SVT surgeries on teenagers that I know, again, several years ago. This is unheard of. So I think a lot of it just has to do with the frequencies that are already around us. Is it going to be incredibly amplified now that they roll out this new spectrum of microwaves? And will that be weaponized? For sure, it'll be weaponized. But does that mean there won't be any casualties that are like unintended? Not that they don't count every single one of them as a bonus. And why I'm going to show you they are targeted. Absolutely. There are people who are dropping Now, are these random people or special people? How do they pick who the targeted individuals are? Used to, the targeted individual beta test programs, that they did pick out who they were going to terrorize. But it seems now that there's been an algorithm loosed that does it randomly. They just randomly pick phones because they want the genocide to be not obvious to people. They want us to think like we have previously. Oh, the top two causes of death in the US are heart disease and cancer. So they think most people will just continue that narrative. Even when they see, 50 sports stars drop right in front of them on the field, they're still like, oh, it happens. And here's those couple of clips that have come out recently. Most of you have already seen them, but in the context of what we just talked about here, I'll show them. The gal at the nail salon that got hit with the frequency pulse out of her own phone, and then the guy on the bike that the CCTV, the surveillance cameras accidentally picked up getting hit with the frequency. But watch this, right here on her arm, you can see it flash. See it right there? She has my cursor might have been in the way, but she has this black shirt on. So watch, she flashes, the phone flashes her, and then it activates it. I'll keep my cursor out of the way this time, but it's right there on her sleeve. Keep an eye and you'll see the flash. There it is. Now watch. She starts to like, where am I? And then it's over. So I'm not going to play it again. You can pause it and rewind it and see, you'll see the flash came out of her phone. And then these are the nano technology, what they're calling nano routers that have been found in the VAX files, of course. And then this is just one of the many, the PubMed.gov documents on exactly that, these nano routers, nano networks, antennas in the terahertz band and stuff. Here's the number at PubMed, 301-55262, if you want to look it up. But it's basically exactly what Bill Gates's patent talks about, 060606, about these nano-sized sensors in the body and all of these healthcare applications and stuff. And then it has down here, it has all of the diagrams. I'll get up there, showing that they link to the phone, just like she had in her hand when that happened, and that these nano sensors will be in the body. See if we can find. And this is where they get those images when these self-assemble. They have these bow tie shaped antennas. And it's up to you what you think about this. You can go and look up the literature on these different nano antennas and routers and the hertz, the frequencies that they operate in, and all of that. It takes a lot of research. Some of what people are putting out are salt crystals. Some are not. They simply are not. And here's another recent one that has made the rounds. It's gone viral, so most of you have already seen it. But it's another example of this that people are talking about, these 5G towers and stuff, sending out directed energy weapons that are specific. They are specifically targeted to people who have this nano. So watch right across here. You'll see on this, see it? And he falls right over. We'll go back and do it again. But right there, you'll see the disturbance. And this is a security camera. So you can see the disturbance come straight through, aimed right at him, and he drops like a, see it? It's like heat on the pavement, it's invisible, but you can see the disturbance. Maybe look over here at the trees on the other side past him. It's hard to detect on the road since it's all one color, the squiggles and the frequency atmosphere. There it goes. So, you be the judge. Is that just a coincidence? Or, is it not actually in the picture, but like an EMP affects the devices, or like a UFO encounter will shut down everybody's devices? Is this something that would not be visible in the atmosphere, but is causing interference, frequency interference on the camera itself? either way, there's no denying that the exact instance that that frequency hits, he drops like a fly. And another interesting thing that Rob mentioned was the immortality portion of this. People don't talk a lot about that. They don't want to talk about that. But there's a very specific reason that they chose these model organisms to genetically engineer these injections, the immortality portion of the Hydra. And in the Human 2.0 video that I did a few years back, we talked about all the big tech companies who are involved in this immortality research. Like this says it well, a mix of money, medicine, technology, and hubris. They believe they're on the brink of achieving immortality because we can isolate genes now and they can pick out the traits that they want and genetically engineer themselves. It's Gattaca. But out of the 500 million flesh vessels that they want to allow to survive this biological apocalypse that they have unleashed, they don't want us all for the same thing. They, like Brave New World, they want a slave race class. They want the breakaway civilization that there's them and there's us. But then among us down in the slave race, some of us, they just want as workers, literal manual labor slaves. So they want us, our brains shut off. I mean, they've already got us tuned down to what, 20%, 25% of our brain is all that we use now. And they want some of us as avatars so that they can put us on like they put on a suit. Similar to the surrogate movies where the people didn't actually go out and do anything. They just sent their surrogates, their avatars out to do it so they could do all sorts of death-defying any adventure they wanted, anything. They didn't have to worry because that was just their avatar. And to an extent we already have this going on, especially in the celebrity class, like we've shown with the celebrity lookalikes and this Lebensborn breeding program that the Nazis did, how it had carried out through history. That's in the Transagenda and Breeding Program video series. Anyway, how they've carried out that Lebensborn breeding program, they've carried it forward, only now very highly sophisticated. And that's why we have this celebrity phenomenon, right? That they all look exactly alike, the beautiful people. And you'll see an old one and a young one alive at the same time, but you can totally tell they are at the very least from the same gene pool, but almost certainly some of them are, they're clones. They're in vitro created, human beings.
Because a lot of fans happen to think that Victoria could be sisters with the Vampire Diaries actress Nina Dobrev. These two have super similar shaped faces and style their hair in similar ways. And this resemblance isn't just a recent development. Victoria and Nina even look alike in their childhood photos.